Under a sky the color of molten gold, the valley of Eldrath stretched wide and silent. Winds swept over the tall grasses like waves upon a green sea, whispering of old gods and forgotten oaths. Among the mountains that framed the horizon stood shapes too vast to be mistaken for mortal dwellings, stone halls carved for beings larger than legend, once home to the giants who had ruled this world before humankind rose from dust. Laura, the banished daughter of the giant queen, sat alone beside a dying river. Her enormous figure, draped in rough woven cloth, cast a shadow long enough to swallow trees. Her hair, dark and tangled, fell in heavy strands across her shoulders. She was vast even by her kind's measure, and though she bore the same regal features as her mother, her softness had been her undoing. The queen, proud and severe, had called her weak. Her sisters, radiant and strong as mountain storms, had mocked her. And when the decree came, that she would be cast out for her unfit form and idle heart, not one voice rose to defend her. For years, she had lived in exile among the cliffs, surviving on mountain herbs and the roots that grew near the stream. The forest animals did not fear her, for they sensed her quiet sorrow. Sometimes they gathered near her when she sang songs of her ancestors, songs that once made mountains tremble, but now her voice was soft and lonely, echoing off stone with no one to answer. It was on one such evening, when dusk painted the clouds in rose and amber, that she saw something she had never seen before. A flash of metal and the scent of smoke drifted on the air. Her keen eyes narrowed. Far below, at the edge of the forest, a small figure struggled, tiny, fragile, clearly not of her kind. A human. He was dragging something, a broken craft of some sort, its wings torn by the wind. He limped, clutching his arm. To Laura, it was like watching a bird trying to carry its own shattered nest. She leaned closer, her enormous hand pressing against the ground for balance, and the earth groaned under her weight. The man froze. He looked up, and for a long moment, their eyes met. To him, she must have looked like a living mountain, a being from the myths his kind whispered about around fires. Her eyes were gray, vast pools of sadness, her lips trembled, unsure if she should speak. He was small enough that she could have crushed him by accident, yet she saw no fear in his gaze, only awe. He raised one hand, slowly, like a greeting. "I mean no harm," he said, his voice barely reaching her. Laura tilted her head, her deep voice rumbling like distant thunder. "You are far from your kind, little one. This valley is cursed to me. None should walk here." He smiled faintly despite his pain. "I didn't mean to. My ship crashed. I think I'm lucky you found me." Lucky. The word hit her like a soft stone. No one had ever called her presence a blessing. She stared, uncertain what to do. Every instinct screamed that she should turn away. She was forbidden to speak to any outsider, forbidden even to show herself. But something inside her, something that had been dying slowly over years of silence, stirred again. "Your arm," she said at last, pointing one thick finger toward the wound. "You bleed." He looked down at the gash streaking crimson over his sleeve. "Yeah, it's not great." She hesitated. Then, moving with surprising gentleness, she dipped her fingers into the river and let the water pour over her palm. She extended it toward him, a massive bowl of shimmering light. "Wash it," she said softly. He stepped forward carefully and dipped his arm into the pool of water she offered. The touch of her presence made the air hum. He looked up at her again, and for the first time he noticed that her eyes weren't just gray, they shimmered faintly with silver light, reflecting the stars that had begun to rise. "Thank you," he murmured. "I'm Aaron." She repeated the sound of his name as if tasting it. "Aaron," she said. "I am Laura, the unwanted one." Aaron frowned. "Unwanted." Her eyes darkened. "I was born of the giant queen, but she called me flawed. Too soft, too slow, too large, so I was sent away, to be forgotten." He looked around the empty valley. "Then this place forgot its queen's heart as well. It feels lonely here." The giantess blinked, startled. No one had ever spoken to her that way, not even the wind, which only whispered reminders of her shame. The human's voice was small but full of warmth. And when he spoke again, his tone was gentle but certain. "You don't seem flawed to me, Laura." Something broke in her chest then, a quiet, painful sound like ice cracking in spring. She looked away, pretending to focus on the fading sunset, but her hands trembled. "You are strange, human. Your kind fears ours. I don't," he said simply. "I was taught to respect what's greater than me. You saved me. That's all that matters." Night crept over the valley, stars glittering above like scattered diamonds. Aaron built a small fire, and though he was no larger than her fingertip compared to her, Laura found herself drawn to its fragile light. She sat near enough to feel its warmth but far enough not to smother it with her breath. As the flames flickered, Aaron spoke of his world, of ships that sailed through darkness, of skies beyond skies. Laura listened, wide-eyed, her sorrow slowly giving way to curiosity. She had thought the world ended at these mountains, now she imagined endless stars, new realms where no one would call her a curse. When he finished, silence returned between them. The river murmured softly, crickets sang in the grass. Aaron, she said at last, when you return to your world, will you tell them of me? He looked up, firelight glinting in his eyes. Yes, I'll tell them I met a giantess who was kind, and that the most beautiful thing in the valley wasn't the mountains, but her heart. Laura's breath caught. She wanted to laugh, to cry, to believe. But she only smiled faintly, lowering her gaze. Then perhaps I will not be forgotten after all. And for the first time since her exile, she fell asleep not to the sound of her own tears, but to the soft rhythm of a human's heartbeat echoing across the quiet valley. Morning came with a veil of mist over the valley. The light was pale, uncertain, as if afraid to wake the mountains. Laura stirred first, the earth shifting beneath her as she moved. Aaron still slept near the remnants of his fire, wrapped in his torn jacket. She watched him in silence, fascinated by how fragile he looked, how small, yet unbroken. The world of giants had no room for fragility, weakness was punished, not understood. But here he was, surviving where even she had nearly given up. She lowered her hand, cupped gently around him to shield him from the chill breeze. He woke with a start, blinking up at her massive eyes. Then he smiled, and something in her heart warmed like the dawn itself. You stayed, he said softly. I said I would. She helped him to his feet with a fingertip, careful not to hurt him. Her touch was enormous, yet tender. The valley, once her prison, now felt almost alive around them, birds circling closer, the wind carrying warmth instead of mockery. Aaron had spent the night thinking. His ship's transmitter was beyond repair. Even if it worked, the mountains would block any signal. If rescue ever came, it wouldn't be soon. But strangely, he didn't mind. The thought of leaving too quickly felt wrong. There was something in Laura's eyes, a quiet strength that called to him, something the people of his world had long forgotten. They began to explore the valley together. For Laura, every step was slow and deliberate. For Aaron, each stride she took covered whole fields. She bent down to show him ancient carvings etched into the cliff walls, symbols of her ancestors, the first giants, who had shaped rivers with their hands and carved mountains for thrones. This was their vow, she told him, tracing a spiral pattern with her finger. That power without heart would bring ruin. Aaron looked up at her. And yet they cast out their gentlest daughter. Her lips curved in a bittersweet smile. Even gods forget their own wisdom. For days they lived that way, human and giantess sharing silence, stories, food, laughter that startled birds from the trees. Aaron showed her how to make small fires with dry grass and stone. She showed him how to listen to the heartbeat of the earth beneath his feet. Sometimes, at night, she would hum softly while he drifted to sleep, her voice like distant thunder softened by rain. But peace, she knew, was never meant to last. On the seventh day, as dusk fell red and heavy, the ground began to tremble, not with her steps, but with something greater. Laura's expression changed, fear flickering across her face. No, not now. Aaron steadied himself as a deep roar echoed through the valley. From the far ridge, figures emerged, tall as trees, armored in silver, carrying spears that gleamed with inner light. Giants. Her mother's sentinels. Laura, who are they? My mother's guard, she whispered. They come for me. She stood to her full height, casting a shadow that swallowed the valley floor. The soldiers halted below her, their leader stepping forward. His voice thundered upward, proud and cold. Laura of the House of Althra. By decree of the Queen, you are summoned to judgment for trespassing upon the sacred valley of our ancestors. Her jaw tightened. You banished me here, now you call it sacred. The Queen's word changes as the stars command, the guard answered. You were seen consorting with an outsider, one of the small ones. A human. His gaze turned to Aaron, and the tone shifted to disgust. You shame your blood, daughter of giants. Aaron stepped forward before Laura could stop him. She's done nothing wrong, he shouted up at them. She saved my life. The laughter that followed was cruel and echoing. The insect speaks for her. How far the mighty have fallen. Laura's fists clenched, her whole body trembling, not with rage, but with shame that burned like a forgotten wound reopened. Aaron saw it and stepped closer to her heel, his voice rising. Don't listen to them. You're stronger than they are. Enough. The guard roared. He raised his spear, light flaring at its tip. The queen demands her daughter return in chains. Step aside, human, or be crushed beneath her fate. Laura's eyes flicked to Aaron, this tiny, foolish being who stood against monsters for her sake. Something inside her, long buried beneath years of silence, ignited. She lowered her hand and shielded him from the guards. No, she said. Her voice was low, but it carried through the mountains like an oath. You will not touch him. And I will not return. The soldiers hesitated. They were strong, but none had ever heard defiance in her voice before. The leader sneered. Then you choose exile over your blood. I choose freedom, she said. And the truth that my heart is not my flaw, it is my strength. With a motion swift as a storm, she slammed her hand into the ground, cracking it open. A wall of stone rose between her and the soldiers. The ground shuddered, boulders tumbling, dust filling the air. Aaron stumbled back, clutching her thumb for balance. Run, little one, she said, her voice shaking. You cannot stay here. I won't leave you, he answered. You'll die if you fight them alone. She smiled faintly, sadness shining through the dust. Then if I fall, remember me. Tell your world what you saw, that even among giants, compassion can be mighty. But Aaron refused. He ran toward her shoulder, climbed the slope of her arm as if scaling a living mountain, and stood by her face. Then we fight together. For a heartbeat, she simply looked at him, the courage in his eyes, the reflection of stars she once thought cold. Then, with a roar that shook the sky, she turned to meet the oncoming spears. The battle was chaos and thunder. Spears shattered against her arms, her cries split the air. Aaron darted from cover to cover, using shards of metal from his wreck to strike the soldiers' feet, drawing their fury. Laura fought like the storms of old, every blow a declaration that she would no longer be silent. When it was over, the valley lay quiet once more. The guards retreated, broken and humiliated, carrying their wounded pride back to the mountains. Laura sank to her knees, exhausted, her breath trembling. Aaron stumbled toward her, his clothes torn, face streaked with soot. He touched her fingertip gently. You did it. No, she whispered. We did. The stars returned then, vast and clear. The valley no longer felt like a prison, it was alive with promise. Aaron looked up at her, the firelight of victory still glowing in his eyes. What will you do now? She smiled, faint but sure. The world is wide, Aaron. If you'll walk beside me, I'll find where I belong. He nodded. Then let's find it together. And as they left the valley, the human and the once banished giantess, the wind carried their laughter across the mountains, where even the gods paused to listen, and the night remembered their names.